Hey there, welcome to my channel. I'm Maureen and this is a Dex Crochet. So today we are going to be doing this crochet one arm top, crochet one arm crop top, I think. So it's a 2-in-1 top. Like you can make this your back part or you can make it your front part, and you can also make this your front part or your back part. So you choose which part you want to be on the front. So I suggest that you do this top in 2 different colors, like the one part should be of a different color and the other should be of a different color. So this is how it looks like. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe, and you can also like this video and yeah, drop a comment just to help my channel grow so that I can continue creating more content for you. So this is how the top looks like, and I'm going to be using the even more stitch. I think it's called the even more stitch. So this is, I like the pattern, the texture, it's just not so plain. Yeah, so you begin by making that part, increase. When you reach around this point, stop increasing, and then you can crochet up to that point and then continue crocheting until you finish that off. So you do the same thing this side, crochet, increase, stop increasing, then crochet up to that point, and like that your top will be done. You can like stitch those parts together, stitch that part together, and your top will be done. Yep, I'm going to go into more detail. So when I measure, this is a finished top, so when I measure I can have 12, but remember I'm working a size 35 inches in the bust, so 12 inches long. I mean, when I reach 12 inches I'll stop increasing. So you begin off with 7 inches, increase up to 12, then decrease to 7 again. That's how our top is going to measure, and this is 1 inch right here. At the top I stopped increasing up to 2 inches, and then the hem ribbing is also 2 inches. So for this top you're going to need 2 parts, and they should be exactly the same. Crochet, increase up this point. When you reach that point you crochet without increasing, and this last line you come and crochet up to this point, then continue crocheting for 1 until you come up with 1 more inch. So you do this and again do the same thing onto this side. They should be so equal, and this is how the stitch looks like. It's the same stitch for this, but I think the yarn made it look like that, so yarn choice also really matters in this. So after that you can stitch this part together, stitch this part together, then you can stitch this front part together, and like that your top will be done. So for the materials I'm going to be using this Himalaya anti-peeling everyday super luxe yarn. You can have a look, these are its credentials. Looks like it's really nice and builds up so fast. Disclaimer, not an ad. Plus I'm going to be using a 4mm hook, a tape measure, then a pair of scissors, and please don't forget a stitch marker because it's really important. So first things first, you're going to make a slip knot. Make a slip knot, and after making a slip knot you're going to make a chain of 30. So this chain determines the size of your top. If you are a little bit, if you're bigger, because this can fit a size small and a size medium, so if you're bigger, please make more chains. Just measure your underarm, like a size that can cover your whole side boob, I should say. So after making a chain of 30, this is how it looks like. And when I measure I have 7 inches, so chain up to 7 inches. It can stretch, but yeah, it is still 7 inches without the stretching. So after that go into the second chain from the hook, second chain from the hook please. with a slip stitch. Make sure that it is a little bit loose because you're going to be working into it. Then into the next stitch you'll insert a half double crochet. Into the next stitch insert a slip stitch. Next stitch insert a half double crochet. So you're going to follow this pattern of slip stitch, half double crochet, slip stitch, half double crochet. So when you reach, I'm going to count 10 chains off, and these are up to 2 inches long. So I'll insert my stitch marker into the 10th stitch from the bottom, and that is going to work as our hem ribbing. You can see like the pattern changes down, so mine will be changing from this point right here. So you're going to count off 10 inches, sorry, you're going to count off 10 stitches or 2 inches, mark off 2 inches, because our style of crocheting is going to be changing from that point. So I'm going to continue crocheting I'm going to continue with the evenmost stitch until I reach to that point. So coming to that point, I'm going to insert my last slip stitch. So I'm going to go into that next stitch where I place my stitch marker, still with a slip stitch, and after I'm going to into that same last stitch, I'm going to insert my stitch marker again. So after that I'm going to continue slip stitching, remember. So I'm going to slip stitch up to the end of the chain, and then I'll meet you at the end of the chain. So continue slip stitching up to the end of the chain. In total I am supposed to be having 10 slip stitches. So continue to slip stitch up to the end of the chain. Into the last stitch, I'm going to make a chain of 1 now, and then turn my work. And after turning my work, I'm going to go into the second chain from the hook. Go into the second chain from the hook with a slip stitch again, and I'm going to slip stitch up to the point where I placed, sorry, I'm slip stitching into the back loop only. So I'm going to slip stitch back loop only up to the point where I placed my stitch marker. Coming to the end, so coming to that point, I'm going to take off the stitch marker and I'm going to place another slip stitch, and then after that I'm going to again place my stitch marker right into that same last stitch that I've placed. So place your stitch marker, and after I'm going to continue. So I'm going to slip stitch into both, sorry, I do a normal slip stitch and not a slip stitch back loop. So continue, followed by a half double crochet in the next stitch. So here what I'm really doing is that I'm placing a slip stitch on top of a slip stitch, and I'm placing a half double crochet on top of a half double crochet. So you're going to place a half double crochet on top of a half double crochet, and you're going to be placing a slip stitch on top of a slip stitch, and I'm going to do this, and we are going to begin increasing from this row, and this is row 2. So continue, and I'll meet you at this point. So coming to the end, I'm going to place my half double crochet. Remember we stopped on a slip stitch, so this row has to stop on a slip stitch. So this is half double crochet, and now I'm going to go into that last stitch, which was a slip stitch. Make sure it's a bit loose because it will give you a hard time crocheting into it. After that, I'm going to make a chain of 2, that is 1. Instead of turning, I'm going to add another chain. So I'm going to go into the second stitch from the hook, which is a chain, go into it with a half double crochet, because the last row I ended off with a slip stitch. So when I'm beginning the third row, I start with a half double crochet. So that I'm doing this so that we don't lose the pattern of slip stitch, half double crochet. I want it to also be seen in the increase section. So continue like that. This is row 3. Meet at this point, and for this part from the slip stitch downwards, nothing changes. Just remember to place a slip stitch back loop only, slip stitch back loop only, and then again place your stitch marker. So every time you reach the stitch marker, you know you're supposed to be placing slip stitch back loop only. So continue up to the end of the row. This is row 3. So for row 3, remember we chain, for row 2, finishing off row 2, we chain 2. When we turn to start row 3, we began with inserting a half double crochet, and then came to the slip stitch, we insert the slip stitch. So for this row 4, we are still on row 4. You're going to take off the stitch marker, and you're going to slip stitch back loop only. So slip stitch back loop only stops on this stitch marker. Again, place your stitch marker, and after slip stitch, do a normal slip stitch through both loops, followed by a half double crochet, followed by a slip stitch, followed by a half double crochet, and I'm going to do this up to the end. So remember, for row 4, for row 3 we started off with a half double crochet. That means this row 4 we are going to start off, end it with a half double crochet still. Then after we shall chain 2, then begin the next row with a slip stitch. So go into it, that is our last half double crochet, and after I'm going to make a chain of 2. See, hope you, if there's anything you don't understand, you can just drop a question in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you. So chain 2 and turn your work. And now, since we ended with the half double crochet on the previous row, we are going to start our 5th row with a slip stitch. Slip stitch into the second chain from the hook, followed by a half double crochet. So like this, we make sure that we keep on placing a half double crochet on top of a half double crochet and a slip stitch on top of a slip stitch. So you're going to repeat row 3, 4, row 3, 4, 5 until you come up with the number of, so you're going to repeat row 2, 3, 4 and 5 until you come up with the number of 48. It will increase, you continue increasing until you come up with 48 rows, and that is approximately 10 inches. So increase until your work measures 12 inches from the top to bottom and 10 inches wide. Just follow the pattern of making sure that you chain toward the end. Yeah, so like this, it has to come to 10 inches. So increase until your work is 10 inches wide and 12 inches long. After that, you are going to stop increasing until we come up with 2 inches. So, but when you're stopping to increase, make sure that you are ending on a slip knot and not a half double crochet. So stop increasing when you realize that you've come up with decks with the necessary inches and length, in length and width, and then make sure that it's stopping on a slip stitch. So chain 1, turn your work. This is how you stop increasing. Instead of chaining 2, you chain 1, then slip stitch in the first stitch and then follow the pattern. So you're going to continue not increasing until you come up with 2 more inches, and that makes it 12 inches. So as I said, from the stitch marker nothing really changes. You just need to pull it out, and that's when you begin slip stitching in the back loop only. And don't forget to place back the stitch marker into that stitch where you begin slip stitching back loop only. So again, then pull it out and place it back and continue with the same pattern. Slip stitch on top of a slip stitch and half double crochet on top of a half double crochet. So yes, a half double crochet. So don't forget you're no longer increasing. And make sure that you're ending on a slip stitch like that. Chain 1, turn your work. So I'm going to make this row up to down, so you have to continue doing this until you make 2 inches of no increase at the top. Make 2 inches of no increase at the top, and for this no increase 2 inches, make sure that you're ending on a slip stitch. So you can still continue until you come up with 2 inches. And work should, at this point, it should be 12 inches long. From that point of no increase, it should be 12 inches long. So continue until you come up with something like this. And at this point, when I make my return row, from this point coming back down, when I come again, I'm going to stop here. And these are, so you're going to grab your top. Remember we started off with 7 inches. So you'll come at this part right here and you're going to measure 7 inches from down to the middle. It should be 7 inches, and then you're going to place your stitch marker. So now you're going to begin crocheting and making sure that you stop at this point, but don't forget it must be stopping at a slip stitch still and not a half double crochet. Or you can just follow this line, the line where we started off with, up to this point, and then you place a stitch marker. So I'm going to begin crocheting and then ending at that point, and I'll make sure that I make 1 inch of that. So when you're done making this 1 inch, you have to place your stitch marker there. And after, you're going to begin single crocheting up to that point only. So let me show you, like you've measured and you've come up with your 7 inches on your work. You're going to make sure that your 7 inches are stopping on a slip stitch. Let's say it's stopping right here on a slip stitch, and after that I'm going to begin crocheting and ending on that point where I've placed the stitch marker. So nothing really changes, only that you're going to begin crocheting and ending on that point where you've placed your stitch marker, after measuring off 7 inches, of course. When you reach that point, you're going to insert a slip stitch oh, you can first remove the stitch marker, insert your slip stitch, chain 1, and then turn your work. Again, I'm going to begin off with a slip stitch. You can still insert your stitch marker, but at this point you already know where you're going to be stopping, so it's not really necessary. And after that, I'm going to continue doing the same pattern up to down, and you're going to continue doing this until this part where we are crocheting up to 7 inches makes 1 inch wide. So continue, you'll be crocheting and ending at that point. The lower part doesn't change, just continue doing the same thing. So continue finishing off your rows, but they should be ending off at that point where you place your stitch marker. So you need to have something like this, and just make sure that it's measuring up to 1 inch more. It must be 1 inch from that point to the end. This part should be 1 inch. So your work should be looking like this by now, and you're going to make another part that looks exactly like this, but I suggest that you use a different color. After that, I'm going to identify my wrong sides, so because I want to stitch my work together. So first you have to make sure that the wrong sides are facing you. So this will be my wrong side too, so it should be out, and then this should be my wrong side, it also should be out. So the right side of my top, the sides I want people to see are the ones inside, and the sides I want people not to see are the ones on top. So you're going to grab your stitch marker, but it's not really necessary. You could just simply begin stitching your work together, but you can follow this part, follow the line, insert your stitch marker so that you don't lose your work. So you can also come here, follow the line, because you want it to be in the same line. See, mostly I aim for where I single crocheted my work, sorry, I slip stitched my work. So go on, insert your stitch marker, and you can also insert another stitch marker at the bottom, but I wanted to place another in on the part that starts off the hem ribbing, because yeah, I want my work to be so corresponding. But the stitch markers are not really necessary. You could simply stitch your work together, go the other side, stitch your work together, and everything will still look great. But for a beginner, this can be really helpful, because yeah, same this side, insert your stitch marker, this is just to hold your work together and give you a sense of direction when you're stitching your work together. You wouldn't want to like overstitch one part and then at the end you have one part overlapping the other. So this is why the stitch markers are really important. So again, go down right here, place your stitch marker, and I'm going to be placing another one here. And after that, I'm going to begin stitching this work together. I'm going to use the single crochet stitch, but you could also use a darning needle. I've lost like around 10 or 20 darning needles, so I gave up on darning needles. I only use that. I'll be using the single crochet stitch to join my work for now. So continue to single crochet your work together. First I'm going to make this, then after I'm going to begin single crocheting my work together. Just make sure that like there's no any formula, just insert your hook, pull up a loop, and then single crochet. Make sure the hook is going through both parts of the top, the front and the back, or the back and the front. So that's what is really necessary here. So continue single crocheting your work together or stitching your work together, whichever method you chose to use. And you're going to do this up to the end. You're going to do this up to the end of the part where you're supposed to be stopping to stitch the work together. coming to the end of stitching this part together. Don't forget, I changed to a 3mm hook for stitching my work together, but you can still use a 4mm hook. It doesn't really make a big difference. I just wanted it to be tighter, so that's why. So chain 1, and after chaining 1 you can now cut off your work. So I'm done stitching this part together. This is how it looks like. This is the underarm part of the arm. This is the no arm part. So when you're done stitching your work together, it should be looking like this, neat and seamless. Look, so I'm going to repeat this onto the other side. I'm going to repeat that onto this side too. I'm going to repeat the same thing onto this side. I'll meet you when I'm done for the top part. So I'm done stitching the sides together, and the only part remaining is the top part, the arm part, top arm part. So you can see how it looks like. I'm really proud of it. So yes, this is the underarm of the arms part. So this is what I have. Remember, we chained 2 inches of no increase, and those are the inches that we are going to stitch together. So remember, when you're stitching your work together, the wrong side has to be on top and the right side has to be inside. That is really important. So this is what you'll be having. So I'm going to grab my stitch marker and place it together, but the stitch mark is not really necessary. You can just know where to begin and where to end. So place your stitch marker right there, and then another right here. So I'm going to stitch these 2 parts. I've already shown you how I'm stitching my work together. I'm using a 3mm hook and using the single crochet stitch. So I'm going to do the same here. Yeah, so I'm done joining my work together. So everything that needs to be joined is joined, so the rest are supposed to remain like the way they are. The next thing, you're supposed to yarn in the weave in the ends and cut off the excess yarn, but I'm not going to do that on mine because I'm going to be, how should I say, I'm going to be using the yarn soon, so for another project. So this is how it looks like. Yeah, let's assume with all the yarns disappearing. You can check out my other videos where I go in detail on how to weave in the ends and cut off the excess yarn. So this is what you're going to do, and after that your top will be completely done. Top is completely done and it should be looking like this. So if you like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and you can also, if you have questions, suggestions, or anything to say, just drop it in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you. Yep. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. So that top is really stretchy. It can accommodate a size small, medium, and if your bust is 37, I think this is also for you. It can really fit perfectly. So this is what you'll be having when you are done making your top, and this is the, yeah, when worn, when you wear it, it should be looking as good as this. For more pics about this top, check out my Instagram. It's Crochets. Don't forget to follow and also subscribe to my channel. See you in the next tutorial, and happy crocheting.